The pavement doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care if you're a war hero, a mother of 5, or an 82-year-old woman who hasn't seen the sun in 70 years. It's hard, cold, and unforgiving. But as brutal as the concrete is, it's got nothing on the jagged soul of a man who thinks vulnerability is a target. I've lived my life surrounded by the roar of engines and the smell of hot asphalt. And I've learned one thing. You can tell the worth of a man by how he acts when he thinks the person in front of him is helpless. Most people see a blind woman and feel an instinct to clear her path. But some see a shadow they can push someone into just to hear the sound of them hitting the bottom. They think because her eyes are dark, nobody is watching the crime. They forget that the Motor Mafia doesn't need a formal invitation to enforce the laws of the street. We don't just ride through this neighborhood. We own the air, the silence, and the safety of every soul the world tries to forget. This is the story of Mrs. Gable. She's 82 years old, and she's been blind since a fever took her sight when she was just a girl. But if you think that makes her weak, you haven't been paying attention. She's a fixture of Hillside, a woman who navigates these blocks with a white cane and a sense of grace that makes most able-bodied men look clumsy. She knows the exact number of steps from her front door to the corner park. She knows where the sidewalk dips near the old oak tree and where the jasmine blooms thickest near the library. She doesn't see the world with her eyes, she feels it with her heart. Every afternoon at exactly 2 o'clock, she makes her pilgrimage to the park bench to listen to the birds and feel the sun on her face. It's her ritual. It's her peace. And in my neighborhood, peace is supposed to be a right, not a privilege. But peace attracts predators. Enter Travis, 24 years old, wearing a smirk that he hadn't earned and surrounded by a crew of bottom feeders who thought turf was something you bought at a sporting goods store. They were loitering near the park entrance, bored and looking for a way to feel significant. They didn't want a challenge. They didn't want to test themselves against someone who could hit back. They were looking for a victim. They saw Mrs. Gable tapping her way down the sidewalk, tap, 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 her cane finding the rhythm of the city. To a real man, that sound is a reminder of human resilience. To Travis, it was the sound of an easy laugh. He didn't want her purse. He didn't want her jewelry. He wanted the sick, twisted rush of watching a person who lives in faith lose their footing and fall into the dark. I was across the street, tightening the chain on my shovel head, the sun reflecting off the chrome. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the shift in the atmosphere. I saw Travis detach himself from the lamp post. I saw the way his buddies started snickering, leaning forward like they were watching a movie. My hand froze on the wrench. I didn't need to be a mind reader to know what was coming. I've seen that look on cowards 1,000 times, that predatory glint when they think they've found someone who can't fight back. Travis positioned himself perfectly. He didn't say a word. He just waited for the white cane to pass, and then he thrust his heavy, booted leg directly into the path of Mrs. Gable's stride. The world slowed down to a crawl. I saw the tip of her cane skip over his boot. I saw her front foot catch on his calf. I saw that terrible, heart-stopping moment where her balance vanished. For a blind person, falling isn't just a physical accident. It's a terrifying plunge into a void where you don't know where the ground is or how hard it's going to hit. She didn't scream. She just gasped her arms flying out instinctively to catch a world she couldn't see. She was heading first toward the jagged edge of a concrete planter. But I don't let grandmothers hit the dirt on my watch. I didn't just run, I erupted. I was off that bike and across the asphalt before the smirk on Travis's face could even fully form. I didn't care about the traffic or the noise. I reached her just as her knees were buckling, just as gravity was about to claim its prize. I caught her mid-air. My leather vest took the impact of her fall, her fragile frame hitting me like a bundle of dried flowers. I pulled her in close, my boots anchoring us both to the earth. I could feel her shaking, her breath coming in short, terrified bursts, her fingers digging into the worn leather of my sleeves. "I've got you, Mrs. Gable," I whispered, my voice a low, grounding rumble. "The ground is right here. You're safe. I'm not letting go." She was trembling so hard, I thought her bones might rattle, her sightless eyes wide with a shock that no human should have to endure. She didn't know it was a trip. In her mind, she had just failed the world she knew so well. But I knew. I looked over her silver head and locked eyes with Travis. The smirk was still there, flickering like a dying candle, but the second he saw the Motor Mafia patch on my chest and the cold, dead look in my eyes, his blood turned to swamp water. He thought he was playing a prank in the shadows. He didn't realize he'd just stepped into the spotlight of a brotherhood that doesn't believe in coincidences. If you've ever seen a bully target the one person who can't defend themselves and felt your soul catch fire, then you're riding with me today. Don't let these cowards think they can operate in silence. Hit that like button right now and drop a Shield in the comments to let the world know that we stand for the vulnerable. We've caught her fall. But now it's time to see what happens when the Motor Mafia decides to level the playing field. This isn't just about a trip on the sidewalk. It's about a reckoning that's been 82 years in the making. I didn't just catch Mrs. Gable. I felt the vibration of her terror through the leather of my vest. It's a specific kind of heartbeat, one that feels like a trapped bird realizing the sky has been taken away. I held her there for a long minute, letting the heat of my body and the steady rhythm of my own heart act as a bridge back to reality. Her hands, thin as parchment and smelling of old lavender, were still white, knuckled on my forearms. Around us, the city hummed along, oblivious to the fact that a minor tragedy had just been averted by the skin of our teeth. But the silence coming from the sidewalk behind me, that was the heavy, suffocating silence of a coward who realized he'd just kicked a hornet's nest. I didn't turn around immediately. I focused on her. "Mrs. Gable, it's Jax," I said softly, easing her back onto her feet, but keeping my hands firmly on her shoulders. "You didn't trip. The sidewalk just had a little, unexpected obstacle, but it's cleared now." She was still gasping, her head tilting as she tried to map out the space around her again. "Oh, Jax, I've walked this path 1,000 times. I don't know how I could have been so clumsy. My cane, it didn't catch it." She was blaming herself. That was the sickening part. She was apologizing for her own near-death experience, while the man responsible was standing 5 feet away with a tongue full of lead. I signaled to Biggs and Hammer. They didn't need a loud shout. They'd been watching the whole scene, like hawks from the clubhouse porch. They rolled across the street, their heavy boots making a sound like distant thunder on the pavement. I handed Mrs. Gable off to them. Take her to her bench, boys. Get her some cold water. Stay with her until the birds start singing again. Biggs took her arm with a gentleness that would surprise anyone who hasn't seen a biker look after his own. As they led her away, the air between me and Travis started to superheat. I finally turned. Travis was trying to play it off. He was leaning back against the lamp post again, his hands in his pockets, trying to force a casual look, but his knees were doing a jitterbug that his ego couldn't hide. His crew, those brave warriors of the sidewalk, had already drifted back 10 feet, looking at their shoes. "Man, what's the big deal?" Travis said, his voice cracking like a dry reed. "It was a joke, all right. She's fine. I didn't even touch her. You caught her, didn't you?" He actually had the nerve to look for her. "Thank you." In my eyes. He thought that, because the physical damage was zero, the depth was zero. He didn't understand that in the Motor Mafia's book, the intent carries as much weight as the impact. I stepped into his personal space. I didn't shove him. I didn't grab his collar. I just stood so close I could see the dilated pupils of his fear. "You think sight is a privilege that gives you the right to play God with the dark, Travis?" I asked, my voice a low, grinding rasp. "You think because she can't see the boot, you aren't a predator? You didn't just trip a woman. You tried to steal the only thing she has left, her confidence in a world that's already taken her eyes." He tried to shrug me off, moving to walk around me. "Whatever, man. It's a free sidewalk." I was just standing there. I didn't move an inch, but suddenly, the rest of the pack was there. 10 bikes, 20 brothers, forming a silent, leather-bound wall around the lamp post. The street was ours now. The traffic seemed to stop. The world narrowed down to this one square of concrete. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a thick, black silk bandana, the one I usually wear under my helmet to keep the dust out of my lungs. "Since you think the dark is so funny, Travis, I think it's time you went on a little tour," I said. "We're going to play a game. It's called the Mile of Truth. You're going to put this on, and you're going to walk. And if you stumble, if you feel that void opening up under your feet like she did, well, let's just say my brothers aren't nearly as soft as I am when it comes to catching falls." The smirk finally died a permanent death. He looked at the wall of bikes, then at the black silk in my hand. He realized he wasn't in a neighborhood anymore. He was in a courtroom where the judge rode a shovelhead. If you're ready to see a bully find out exactly how terrifying the world is when you can't see the blow coming, you need to stay tuned for the next stretch of this ride. This isn't just a lesson. It's a recalibration of a man's soul. Hit that like button and drop a JUSTIE in the comments. We've caught the grandmother, but now we're about to let the coward find out what it's like to lose his way in the dark. I didn't wait for him to agree. In my world, when you forfeit your humanity by targeting the weak, you forfeit your right to say, no. I stepped forward and wrapped that black silk bandana around Travis's head. I tied it tight, tight enough that he couldn't see a single flicker of the afternoon sun. The second the knot was secured, I felt his entire body go slack. That's the thing about bullies, they rely on their eyes to find a target. But the moment they can't see the world, they realize they have no balance in their own soul. He stood there, swaying on the spot, his hands reaching out to grab at a reality that was no longer there. "Don't touch the lamp post, Travis," I whispered into his ear. And don't look for your friends. They're already gone. It's just you, me, and the long, dark road. We started the walk. I didn't lead him by the hand. I didn't give him a cane. I just walked a half step behind him, the heavy thud of my boots acting as the only lighthouse in his ocean of black. We headed toward the industrial district, a mile-long stretch of uneven pavement, cracked curbs, and unexpected obstacles. Every time he took a step, his foot would hover in the air for a second too long, searching for the ground, like a blind man on a tightrope. He was breathing in shallow, jagged gasps. Every rustle of a leaf, every car that roared past, made him jump like he'd been struck. "It's too dark, a man!" "Please." "I can't do this," he wailed, his voice cracking with a terror he'd never known. He stumbled over a small pebble, and his arms flailed wildly. His fingers scratching at the air, he was terrified of the very thing he'd forced on Mrs. Gable, the unknown. "Keep walking," I growled, the roar of a brother's bike idling right beside us to keep him on the path. Mrs. Gable does this every day. She doesn't have a choice. She lives in this dark. But she does it with her head held high while you're falling apart after 10 minutes. Who's the strong one now? Travis. Who's the target now? We made him navigate the entire stretch. We made him walk past the construction site, where the sidewalk was narrow and the drop-off was steep. We made him cross the alleyways where the smell of garbage and the sound of stray cats made his skin crawl. I watched him crumble. The cocky gym rat was gone. In his place was a fumbling, sobbing wreck of a human being who was finally realizing that the world is a very big, very scary place when you don't have someone looking out for you. By the time we reached the 3/4-mile mark, his shirt was drenched in cold sweat. He'd tripped twice, not because we pushed him, but because he was so paralyzed by fear he couldn't find his own feet. I didn't catch him. I let him hit the ground. I let him feel the sting of the gravel on his palms. I let him feel that moment of pure, unadulterated helplessness. "Get up," I told him, standing over him as he sobbed into the dirt. You thought it was a joke to watch a woman hit the concrete. How does it feel, Travis? Does the ground feel funny now? Is the darkness still a punchline? He didn't answer. He just curled into a ball, clutching his head. He was broken. But the Motor Mafia doesn't just break things, we fix 'em. And Travis wasn't done yet. He had one more stop to make. And it was the most important one of his life. If you're starting to feel the weight of this walk, then you know what real justice feels like. It's not about a fist, it's about a mirror. Subscribe and hit that bell. Drop a recommend in the comments if you're ready for the finale. I grabbed Travis by the scuff of his hoodie and hauled him off the gravel. He was a shell of a man, his legs shaking so violently he could barely keep his boots under him. We began the final trek back toward the park, back toward the bench where Mrs. Gable was waiting. The roar of the bikes followed us like a rolling thunderstorm, a constant reminder that the dark wasn't just in his head, it was surrounding him. Every crack in the sidewalk felt like a canyon to him. Every brush of a bush against his leg felt like a predator. He had lost all sense of direction, all sense of time. He was a prisoner in a world of his own making. When we finally reached the edge of the park, I stopped him. I didn't take the blindfold off. I wanted him to feel the shift in the air, the smell of the jasmine, the sound of the fountain, and the soft, rhythmic tapping of a white cane against the pavement. Mrs. Gable was standing there, Biggs and hammer flanking her like stone guardians. She was holding a small paper bag, probably the cookies she'd bought earlier. She looked peaceful, a stark contrast to the trembling wreck standing beside me. I ripped the bandana off his head. Travis blinked, the afternoon sun hitting his eyes like a physical blow. He squinted, his face smeared with dirt, sweat, and the dried salt of his own tears. He looked at the world as if he was seeing it for the first time, and in a way he was. He looked at the trees, the sky, and then his eyes landed on Mrs. Gable. She couldn't see the state he was in, but she could feel the heavy, jagged energy coming off him. "Mrs. Gable," I said, my voice steady. "The man who tripped you is standing right here. He's spent the last hour in your world. And I think he's realized it's a lot bigger than he can handle." Travis stood there, staring at her. He didn't look like a bully anymore. He didn't look like a guy who thought he was better than everyone else. He looked like a kid who had just looked into the abyss and realized the abyss was looking back. He looked at her fragile hands and her sightless eyes, and for the first time in 24 years, he felt the weight of someone else's life. "I'm so sorry," Travis whispered. It wasn't a rehearsed apology. It was a broken, guttural sound that came from a place of genuine shame. "I didn't know. I didn't think. I'm a coward, ma'am. I'm so sorry." Mrs. Gable reached out, her hand searching the space between them. Travis hesitated, then stepped forward, letting her fingers find his shoulder. She moved her hand up to his face, her touch as light as a butterfly. "You're shaking, son," she said, her voice filled with a kindness that felt like a hot iron to his soul. "The dark is a scary place when you're alone in it. But it's even scarier when you're the one creating it for others. You have the gift of sight. Don't waste it on being blind to the people around you." I saw a single tear cut a track through the dirt on Travis's cheek. He didn't wipe it away. He just stood there, letting the grace of an 82-year-old woman burn through the rot in his heart. But as I told you before, the Motor Mafia doesn't believe in cheap grace. Justice is a debt, and it has to be paid in full. I stepped between them, looking Travis dead in the eye. "You've said the words, Travis. Now you're going to do the work. From today on, you are the official site safety officer of this park. Every day at 20:00 p.m., you will be here. You will meet Mrs. Gable at her door, and you will walk her here. You will clear every branch, every stone, and every person who thinks they can stand in her way. You will be her eyes. And if I hear that she so much as stumbles, if I see a single scratch on her cane, then we're going on a much longer walk, one where the blindfold never comes off." Travis didn't even look for an out. He just nodded, his eyes fixed on Mrs. Gable. "I'll be here, Jax. I promise. I'll be here every day." I watched him walk her to the gate of her little garden. He held the gate open with a reverence I'd never seen from a kid his age. He waited until she was safely inside, until the door clicked shut, before he turned back to face us. He wasn't part of our club, and he never would be. But he was no longer a stranger to the code. He'd learned that respect isn't about who you can push down. It's about who you're willing to lift up. The sun was setting as we pulled out of the park, the chrome of 50 bikes catching the last rays of light. We didn't need to say anything. The street was quiet again. The balance had been restored. People think the Motor Mafia is about the noise, but it's really about the silence. The silence of a neighborhood that knows it's protected. We are the shield for the people who can't see the blow coming. We are the ground for the ones the world tries to trip. And as long as our engines can roar, no one in this town walks alone in the dark. Respect the elders, protect the vulnerable, and never, ever think we aren't watching. This is Jax, signing off.